Today our customer has brought in an iPhone X or an iPhone 10 that he believes has had some water damage done to it. Typically you can notice water damage immediately by checking out the camera assembly on the back side or the front side. They should be filled with fog or condensation. This particular one is not, so I'm not sure the full extent of this liquid damage, and we won't know until we actually open it up. Currently the phone is powered off, and the customer states that he was having trouble getting it to power on. Said that it was underwater for about 4 hours, or basically in something that was filled with water for about 4 hours. So we're going to start at the very bottom with our 2 pentalobe screws. We're going to remove both of those, not taking them out all the way. We'll pull them out by hand in just a moment so that we don't lose them. We need to set those aside somewhere important so they don't get lost. Next, we're going to be grabbing our pry tool here, and we're going to work our way around the edges. If this phone is actually water damaged, the liquid will actually soften up the adhesive slightly, allowing it to open just a pinch easier than a normal phone would. This one I want to be very careful because the screen itself is not actually damaged, so I'm going to be working around just a little bit. Continuing taking our pry tool around the screen edge here, just to softly lift it up. Don't want any cracks. I don't really feel like replacing this screen for free, especially if the phone is water damaged and doesn't work for some reason. So we're going slowly, just working our way back and forth, kind of walking the display up and out of the frame. If you feel it getting tight, stop. Do not want to put excess pressure on this. It will not go very well. A little bit of alcohol can help, but I don't want the alcohol to get inside and kind of confuse us as to if there is actually water damage or not. Once we've got the screen up, we can give it a wiggle back and forth. That will loosen up from the top. And we are open. So far inside we do have some signs of liquid damage. Let's zoom in so we can see it here. We have got a little bit of condensation building up on top of the camera shield. We've also got a little bit of condensation building up on top of the main speaker there. A little bit on top of the battery down here. And our red water damage indicator has turned red. It is typically white until it encounters water, and that causes it to turn red and indicate that the phone has experienced some liquid damage on the inside. Let's go ahead and remove these 4 tri-wing screws. This phone, being an iPhone XS, actually has a single Phillips head screw. It is the long screw that connects the board to the actual frame of the phone and clamps it all down with a single shield. I'll get those out. I'm going to zoom out a bit so we can see what's actually going on here. Then we're going to grab our Phillips head and remove that last one. Once that's off, I'm going to carefully remove this little shield and set it off to the side with the rest of our screws. We'll unplug the battery here. I always recommend using a plastic tool to disconnect the battery, but because I am pretty experienced with this, I have no problem using some metal tweezers, just very, very carefully about placement. We're going to remove the screen entirely by removing the LCD, the digitizer flex connection, as well as the proximity and ear speaker assembly, which has a connector right here, oddly enough. We're going to take that. I'm going to grab a little bit of our booze. Alcohol doesn't solve all problems, but it does when we're talking about phone adhesive. Drop a little bit right there because the flex connection for the proximity and ear speaker is actually adhesed to the flex assembly for the front-facing camera. This makes repairs incredibly tricky if you just yank out the proximity sensor, because you can end up killing your front cameras and potentially killing Face ID. Not something fun. We'll remove all that, and you can see the water-resistant adhesive didn't really do too much at all for the customer. Once we've done that, I like to take the phone and disconnect the remaining connections from the board. This way, if any water is trapped underneath, it will get pulled out while it is in our dehydrator. Especially on the camera here, since we noticed a little bit of moisture on the top of the camera assembly, we'll go ahead and disconnect those very carefully. You don't want to pry any resistors or capacitors off the board, So just very carefully unplugging these like the little Legos that jerry-rig everything says they are. This right here is the main charging connector right here. This runs all the way down under the board and into your charge port. Once we've got all of these disconnected, I like to remove the SIM tray. That's going to allow another spot for the water to escape and for the heat to actually begin the drying process. Remove our SIM card there, place it off to the side somewhere safe. Then we're going to take this and place it in the dehydrator. Then take the screen here, and I'm going to leave the screen assembled as it is. There's not much that you can do as far as moisture that gets into the port, but we're going to place this into the dehydrator as well. So we'll check back in about 45 minutes and see what we've got. Alright, now that the phone has been in the dehydrator for about an hour or two, the phone should be completely dehydrated and free of moisture, so we're going to take a closer look at the board here. We've got the camera hooked up to the microscope, and you'll notice down here by all these connections that there's this foam. This kind of foam that protects the connectors and the components that are below that. And the foam is a little bit difficult to remove, so what we do is we take a little bit of our alcohol and we coat that. Using 99% alcohol is not going to cause any damage to the components, especially since the battery is disconnected here. So there's no real risk of anything getting fried, just things getting very clean. Once that alcohol starts to dry up and evaporate a little bit, we're going to grab one of the foamy corners over here. I'm going to grab this piece of foam and I'm going to work it in a circular motion. Circular motion helps to lift it all off in one go. And we'll peel that up and off. And that's going to reveal any of the little components underneath. They are still covered with this kind of silicone black shielding. That just helps protect the components, but it allows us to see if anything has blown out or shorted out, because it will actually burn that layer away and you'll see exposed components. So far this one is looking pretty good. I don't see any signs of corrosion out of it, and so what we'll probably end up doing is reassembling and testing at this point. Honestly, no signs of corrosion. This customer may have dropped it in relatively fresh water. It's really water that has a higher sodium content or salt content in it, and that completes the electrical current and causes things to short out, voltages to spike, and all kinds of nasty things that your phone is not supposed to have to deal with. So let's go switch over to the bench camera and we will begin reassembling this guy right here and see what happens. Alright, welcome back to the workbench. So now we're going to enter the process of reconnecting everything. Let's plug everything back in, including the camera, the flash module right there. Some of these connectors are a little bit picky. Just clip those right in. Bottom camera connected. Let's connect our front cameras there. The last thing that we're going to connect though is the battery. So this one right here next to the battery is our wireless charging coil. I'm going to connect this right here. This is our kind of a SIM tray connector. Well, it connects over the SIM tray, but it actually runs down to the charge port and acts as an antenna as far as I'm aware. We'll reconnect that charge port. Now we're going to grab the actual screen. This is still the original water damaged one. It has also been through the dehydrator, so any moisture under there should have been evaporated. That doesn't always revive it though. Sometimes the screen is absolutely dead, especially if you're using an OLED screen. Once oxygen finds its way in between the layers of the OLED, it actually kills the pixels inside, causing it to completely go black. Touch should still respond if that occurs. Let's plug that back in. Got our battery connected. Now hold down for power. Hope for the best. We have an Apple logo. This may just work. So we're going to let this thing fully boot up, make sure everything stays connected. I'm not going to replace any shields on there until I know for sure that this is working correctly, and then that it is going to fully boot up. It looks like it is entering some kind of a recovery state based on the little progress bar that's below the Apple logo there. Let's zoom in and see if we can see that progress bar ticking away. Well, that's going to be a while, so let's let's jump cut till it's done. Progress bar is moving incredibly slow, and I am uncertain the state of this battery, so we're going to give it a little bit of life support down here at the bottom. Let's plug that in. Make sure that we're pulling some amperage. Looks like we are. We're getting pulling about 2 amps. So it is engaging the charger, and it is fast charging, which is a great sign. Doesn't appear to be any damage to the charge port, at least. So we'll let this continue and check back in a moment. Finally, our little iPhone XS has booted up, and it looks like it has been updated. Amazing. So this one is working pretty darn well. Gonna continue. Let's enter in our Wi-Fi real quick. Alright, we're gonna join that network, make sure it connects. And it looks like this one has been fully reset. I'm going to this one is not allowing me to skip this step. What I'm going to do at this point, since it is working so well and I don't see any damage to the screen and the battery is pretty good, I'm actually going to disconnect it. Let's power it off. We're going to reopen this, and we're going to replace that single shield that holds it all together. You'll remember from the start of this video that we have a Phillips head that goes in the middle. This is our long screw, and it goes in the long hole. Do not put long screw in the short hole. You're going to have a real bad time if you do. And take our little tri-wing. This is the shortest one. It plugs into the bottom here onto the lower level of the board. The iPhone XS actually has a dual stacked motherboard. There are 2 boards in there that are fused together with a lot of different solder joints around the edges, and a couple other manufacturers like Samsung and LG have started to adopt this process as well, and it just allows for a little bit more tech to be packed into a small space without increasing the thickness or the size of your phone overall too much. It's a very good sign. Let's grab our SIM card here. Place that to the tray, and we will snap that back into place. And at this point I still really need to test it out before I fully reassemble it, but since it is open, I'm just going to close this up without replacing the pen loops at the bottom. Now I'm going to finish testing this phone out, but overall I believe that this one is fixed, and that is how to properly do a water damage recovery. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you on the next one.